Really what we have to do is to understand the nature of that history and familiarize ourselves with that history. It's always interesting to think that all of the museums and the archives that are there tell the story of being and how the national history. But there's so many different sources that we can gain this history from, because for as much as can be said for archives, which are very important and being preserved, my experience is that even the way in which archives are put together, there is an implicit bias in that. Let me give you an example. So I was told that Black people did not play a part necessarily in the anti-apartheid movement. And when I looked at the archives, indeed, I didn't see much of a Black presence there. I didn't hear much of a Black voice. It was minimal, let's say, amongst all of the organizational notes, committee minutes, ephemera, newspapers, etc. So from just looking at the archive, you would think, oh yes, the anti-apartheid movement was just made up of mostly middle class and some working class white people trying to campaign to free Nelson Mandela far away. Isn't it strange that there were no Black people there whatsoever? Didn't they care? Were they doing something else? What was going on there? Well, of course, that's not the true story, because when one shifts one's view from that standard status quo, if you want, and those sort of official histories, and when you start actually talking to people and looking at areas of production and record keeping within those communities, then you see that there was so much more going on. And the reality is that those who established those archives really didn't have those networks or leads, and even those that formed that movement didn't have those connections to be able to fill out that story. So it is, as Chimamanda talks about, it is a single story, and I think it's imperative for us not just to look at the mainstream history, but to think more creatively at other kinds of histories. My book came out of a determination to prove naysayers wrong. There were so many voices retelling their memories of the anti-apartheid movement and what they did. And I didn't hear or see any Black voices. What really struck me was the 40-year anniversary of the anti-apartheid movement that was held within the South African embassy, where there were hundreds of people there. And from my memory, only a very small handful of Black people present. The great Professor Stuart Hall was on the stage, and he was one of the speakers, but no reference was made in particular of the parallel issues of race and class in this country in the 1980s. And I came away from there thinking there must have been a lot of parallels, a lot of connectivity. Where is the Black voice on this? And this was one of the main drivers for me to start thinking about ways in which Black radical action in Britain had something to say about the issues of the day.